There is a fire within every person. Sometimes it blazes with purpose. Other times it flickers in the wind of doubt. That fire is desire, raw, emotional, untamed, and powerful. Desire is what first stirs the soul. It's what wakes you in the middle of the night with a restless mind and a vision that won't leave you alone. It makes you hungry for more than what you've settled for. Desire alone is not enough. The world is full of people who wanted something badly but never got it. Why? Because they mistook passion for power. They thought that wanting something intensely was the same as working relentlessly toward it. They confused vision with labor. That is where discipline enters. Discipline is not glamorous. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't feel good at first. Discipline is getting up when you'd rather stay in bed. It is writing one more page when your brain is tired. It is showing up after you failed and doing it again. It is your commitment to consistency even when the emotion that got you started has evaporated into thin air. It is the grind that takes place behind closed doors, and yet without it, desire is just a beautiful idea that dies in silence. Desire gives you the why. Discipline gives you the how, and more importantly, gives you the habit. It transforms fleeting motivation into lasting momentum. You cannot wait for inspiration to strike. You have to move whether it strikes or not. The people who succeed in this world don't do so because they're more inspired than others. They succeed because they act in spite of the days when inspiration abandons them. They have built a fire and learned to feed it with fuel that doesn't depend on mood. There's a dangerous myth in society that says you should feel like it to do it. That is the language of the weak. The truth is, feelings are followers, not leaders. They will catch up, but only if you stop letting them drive. Discipline teaches you to move forward even when your body aches, when your confidence shakes, when your mind screams to stop. It is the cold steel spine behind every warm dream. It is the structure behind every success that looked like magic from the outside. Desire is what gets written down in journals. Discipline is what shows up in calendars. One is an emotion. The other is an execution. One is romantic, the other is ruthless. But together they form the unbeatable combination that moves mountains and rewrites destinies. There are moments in life when desire surges. You feel invincible, you declare your goals, you make promises to yourself, and for a while the fire is enough. But then the hard part begins. The road gets long. The noise of everyday life returns. Distractions multiply. Results don't come fast enough. That's the test. That's when discipline must step in and carry the torch. If you haven't trained for that moment, desire will betray you. It will leave you stranded when things get inconvenient. Discipline is built, not found. It is created in the small, unseen decisions made daily, choosing focus over comfort, purpose over pleasure, intention over impulse. It is forged in sacrifice. The sacrifice of ease, of short-term gratification, of cheap rewards. You must become someone who honors effort even when no one is watching. Especially then, people often say they're not motivated, but lack of motivation is not the problem. It's lack of training. If you've trained yourself to act only when you feel like it, then you've trained yourself to lose. Discipline retrains your response. It says, I act because it must be done, not because it feels good to do it. And the strange truth is that over time, what felt painful becomes familiar. What was once effort becomes identity. It's no longer what you do, it becomes who you are. Desire will whisper, but discipline will decide. When you force yourself to keep going, especially when you don't want to, you are building something far more powerful than progress. You are building character. You are teaching yourself that you are in control. Not your circumstances, not your emotions, not the voice of doubt, just you, your will. Your refusal to break, your relentless dedication to a goal that doesn't need applause to be real. Defeat is a moment. Failure is a mindset. Most people never learn the difference. And because of that, they never rise after the first fall. They meet resistance and assume it's the end. They get rejected once and decide they're unworthy. They hear a no and translate it into never. But that's not how greatness is built. Temporary defeat is part of the process. It is life's method of asking, how badly do you want it? It separates the curious from the committed, the dabblers from the driven. Every person who ever achieved anything worth remembering met with defeat more than once. In fact, the more they accomplished, the more often they failed. Not just small stumbles, but gut-wrenching, soul-testing setbacks. And yet they continued. They understood that falling short doesn't mean falling forever. What matters most is not the loss, but the lesson. You either get bitter or you get better, but you don't get both. You will be tested. Life will not hand you your dream wrapped in silk and presented on silver. It will resist you. It will ask you to prove yourself. Temporary defeat will come in the form of rejection letters, missed opportunities, businesses that collapse, relationships that don't work out, efforts that go unnoticed, and results that don't match the work you put in. But those aren't signs that you're done. They're signs that you're beginning. They are the bricks from which perseverance is built. What most people call failure is nothing more than life's feedback loop. Temporary defeat is the signal to reassess, refine, and return. But the untrained mind hears it as final. That's because we've been taught to fear mistakes, conditioned to believe that if we fall short, we are somehow lesser, conditioned to associate our worth with a scoreboard. That conditioning is a lie. Defeat doesn't define you. Quitting does. The person who endures the most defeats but keeps going becomes the one with the greatest story. Every fall has a function. Every stumble is a setup for strength. If you refuse to make it your identity, the danger is in the pause. It's what you tell yourself during that moment when the plan doesn't work out, when the business fails, when the interview goes nowhere, when the door closes, that moment of silence after the setback. That's where the battle takes place. If you start believing that your temporary defeat is who you are, you've already lost. But if you say to yourself, this is a chapter, not the whole book, then you've claimed something most never do. The power to rewrite the outcome. Defeat is not a punishment, it is a teacher. And it teaches with precision. It reveals where you're weak, where you're unclear, where you're unfocused, where you're soft. It forces you to look at what you didn't want to confront. It demands growth. Those who avoid defeat also avoid development. If everything worked on the first try, you'd never build grit. You'd never sharpen strategy. You'd never learn how to bend without breaking. And when real storms came, and they always do, you'd collapse under the weight of untested ambition. Temporary defeat also filters out the unserious. It exposes those who were only half in, those who talked more than they acted, those who wanted the reward but not the responsibility. And that's a good thing. because you don't want to compete with the crowd. You want to outlast it. You want to be the one who stood still when the rest scattered, the one who showed up again after being knocked down again and again, the one who heard "not yet" and turned it into "watch me." You must train yourself to respond to defeat with clarity, not collapse. Ask yourself, what can I learn? Where can I improve? What do I need to let go of? Who do I need to become to overcome this? Because every level demands a new version of you. And sometimes defeat is just life's way of saying, you're not ready yet. But you can be if you're willing to become more. That is not failure. That is refinement. Most people don't fail, they stop. They confuse delay with denial. They interpret challenge as closure. But time and time again, history proves that those who keep going despite defeat are the ones who win in the end. Not because they never lost, but because they never accepted loss as the final word. They rewrote the meaning of their setbacks. They used the ashes of disappointment to build their fire back stronger. Everything begins in the mind. Before the action, before the result, before the change, there is a thought, a belief, a decision. Your entire life, everything you've built or failed to build, everything you've started or abandoned can be traced back to one place, your thinking. Your mind is the master key that unlocks the door to either growth or stagnation, success or struggle, power or paralysis. And the truth is, no one gets to hold that key but you. Most people spend their entire lives trying to change external circumstances without ever changing the internal command center. They chase better tools, better timing, better luck, never realizing that the real tool is how they think, how they speak to themselves, and how they respond under pressure. You don't rise higher than your dominant thoughts. You don't outperform the script you've written in your head. You may get glimpses of progress, but without changing your mindset, you will sabotage your own momentum. The outside will always reflect what's going on inside. Every belief you accept becomes a door you open, or a wall you run into. If you believe you're not smart enough, strong enough, capable enough, you will act accordingly. Not because it's true, but because your mind will filter every experience to fit that belief. That's how powerful it is. Your mind is not a passive observer, it's an active architect. It's shaping the structure of your life in every moment, whether you're aware of it or not. The thoughts you tolerate become the life you tolerate. You have to take control of what enters your mind, what stays there, and what drives your choices. That means becoming ruthlessly selective with what you feed your mind, what you read, what you watch, who you listen to, what you say to yourself in the quiet. Every word, every image, every mental rehearsal is either empowering or eroding your future. Discipline doesn't start with habits, it starts with thoughts. If your mind is undisciplined, your results will be unpredictable. If your mind is sharp, your actions will follow. Repetition is how beliefs are formed. If you were told you weren't good enough growing up, and you repeated it in your head long enough, it became a truth for you, even if it was a lie. But the same principle can be used in reverse. You can plant new beliefs, stronger ones, more accurate ones. You can repeat thoughts like, I am capable, I am relentless, I am a finisher, I face challenges head on, and if you do it long enough, your mind will stop questioning it and start reinforcing it. Your mind is a tool, not a master. But most people let it run wild. They let fear speak louder than facts. They let doubt drown out desire. They listen to the same excuses until they sound like truth. They run mental loops that reinforce limitation, and then they wonder why nothing changes. But change doesn't begin with doing more. It begins with thinking differently, with questioning every assumption that's held you back, with identifying the silent beliefs that keep you stuck, with replacing mental weakness with mental strength. Mental strength isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. It's developed every time you override a negative thought, every time you sit with discomfort instead of running from it, every time you force yourself to do what you said you would do, even when the feeling has long passed. The mind obeys repetition, and you must train it daily. Train it to seek solutions, not problems. Train it to stay calm under stress. Train it to see setbacks as setups. Train it to hold the vision, even when the evidence isn't there yet. Visualization is not fantasy, it's rehearsal. When you picture success in vivid detail over and over again, your brain begins to believe it's real. And what the brain believes, the body follows. That's how athletes prepare, that's how leaders lead, that's how winners win, by mastering their internal world before anything changes externally. You can program your mind for precision, for endurance, for resolve, but only if you treat it like a muscle and work it with intention. Most people are locked out of their potential not because they lack ability, but because they've never learned to use the key. They're imprisoned by old stories, by hand-me-down beliefs, by mental habits picked up from people who stopped trying long ago. But none of that has to be permanent. You can write new programming. You can take control of the conversation happening between your ears. You can break the cycle of hesitation, insecurity, and fear, not by chance, but by conscious decision and mental discipline. Your emotions are not in charge. They never have been. They only seem like they are because most people spend their lives reacting instead of acting. They wait to feel like doing something before they do it. They wait to be inspired before they start. They wait to feel confident before they make the move. And so they wait. Days become weeks, weeks become years, and they never take the first step. But here is the truth that most never hear. Motion comes first. Emotion follows. You don't have to feel ready to begin. You don't have to feel motivated to act. You don't even have to believe in yourself fully to take the next step. What you have to do is move. Movement triggers momentum. Action activates energy. It flips the internal switch that so many think must be flipped before they do anything. The mind is trained by what the body does. The emotional state bends to the direction of physical action. When you move, your mindset moves with you. Think about any time you felt stuck. Chances are you weren't moving. You were thinking, sitting, hesitating, analyzing, waiting for a mood shift that never came. Because moods don't create movement. Movement creates moods. The fastest way to change your mind is to move your feet, do one thing, take one action, no matter how small. You'll notice it, your energy changes, your breath changes, your confidence shifts slightly forward. That's not magic, that's physiology. Your body sends the signal and the mind responds. The problem is that most people reverse the order. They've been conditioned to believe they need motivation to start, that motivation leads to action. But that's a lie. The actual formula is this. Action leads to motivation, which then fuels more action. Discipline starts the engine. You do what must be done whether you feel like it or not, and then your system catches up. The positive emotion doesn't precede the effort. It is the reward for showing up anyway. This is why routines matter, not because they are glamorous, but because they are grounding. A routine teaches your nervous system what to expect. It creates a rhythm, a beat your body can follow regardless of your feelings. Wake up and move. Sit down and write. Hit the gym even when your head is full of doubt. Get out of bed even when your chest is heavy with apathy. Every time you do that, you're sending a signal. I move first, my feelings follow me. It's not about denying your emotions. It's about refusing to be dominated by them. Emotions are indicators, not dictators. They are information, not commands. You can listen to them, acknowledge them, and still act against them. That is power, that is self-leadership. When you learn to move through emotional resistance, you start to train your system to respond to purpose, not just impulse. You teach yourself that your actions are led by intention, not by mood swings. Action creates evidence. It gives your brain proof that you're not powerless. It builds the case for a new self-image. When you act, you create a reference point that overrides fear. Even if it's imperfect, even if it's small, it tells your mind, I am the kind of person who does hard things. That identity builds slowly, but it builds strongest in moments when you didn't want to move and did anyway. This principle applies to everything. Confidence doesn't come before you speak up in the meeting. It comes after you've spoken. Courage doesn't show up before the risk. It shows up in the doing. Focus doesn't arrive before you sit down. It sharpens once you start. Waiting to feel like it is the fastest way to never become it. Emotion follows motion. You can't think your way into a new life. You have to act your way there. Motion doesn't need to be massive to matter. Start with one push-up, one call, one sentence, one step. That's how inertia is broken. That's how resistance loses its grip. The body moves, the blood flows, the brain shifts gears, and suddenly what felt impossible becomes manageable. You build your day in steps, not leaps, and you build your mind the same way. So when the alarm goes off and your first thought is not today, get up anyway. When you feel like the last person in the world capable of progress, take one step anyway. When you don't feel inspired, start working anyway. You will find time and again that your body will carry your mind where it needs to go. If you teach it that motion leads and emotion follows. Excuses sound good. They sound reasonable, logical, even intelligent. That's what makes them dangerous. They are lies. But they wear nice clothes. They arrive dressed as explanations. They speak in polished language. They say things like, I don't have enough time, or I'm not ready yet, or I just need things to settle down. They pretend to protect you, but they're actually robbing you. Every excuse you believe is a thief. It steals opportunity, momentum, growth, and progress, and it never pays you back. Excuses don't show up as weakness. They disguise themselves as caution, as responsibility, even as wisdom. That's why people cling to them so tightly, because saying I don't want it badly enough is too honest. Saying I'm scared feels too vulnerable, so the mind creates something prettier. It tells a story that removes blame and gives comfort. It builds a case for delay. But comfort is not your ally. It's the silent killer of every dream worth chasing, and excuses are its favorite weapon. The mind is clever. It will protect your ego at all costs. It hates the idea of failure. So instead of risking the pain of trying and falling short, it hands you an out. A good reason to postpone. A socially acceptable escape route. You'll say you don't have the resources. You'll say you need more clarity. You'll say the timing is off. But none of that is the truth. The truth is, deep down you know what you need to do, you just haven't forced yourself to do it yet. That's why you must become a ruthless examiner of your own narrative. You have to learn to spot the difference between a real obstacle and a dressed-up excuse. You have to ask yourself, is this the truth, or is this just something that feels good to say out loud? The mind will always default to ease unless you train it for war. And success is a war, not against the world, but against your own resistance. Every excuse is a white flag. Every time you use one, you're surrendering a piece of your potential. People don't lose because of their circumstances. They lose because they choose their excuses over their responsibility. They allow the story to shrink their standard. They stop at the first no, the first inconvenience, the first bad day. They make failure final by giving it a narrative. But every excuse is just a way to avoid the discomfort of discipline. Every excuse is fear hiding behind language. If you want to grow, you must rip the costume off your excuses and call them what they are: lies that keep you small. The difference between someone who wins and someone who wishes is not intelligence, luck, or talent. It's the decision to act without waiting for perfect conditions. Winners move in imperfect environments. They take imperfect steps. They build on imperfect progress. But they don't give power to excuses. They don't let the story become the sentence. They don't allow the narrative to override the mission. They know that momentum doesn't belong to the most qualified. It belongs to the most committed. Excuses are habits. They start small. You skip one workout and say it's because of the weather. You miss one deadline and blame it on someone else. You pass on one opportunity and say you're being cautious. But excuses never stop at one. They multiply. They reinforce each other. Before you know it, you've built a system of avoidance, a web of justification so tight you can't even see the truth anymore. That's why you must catch excuses early and crush them quickly. You must interrupt the story with action. You don't need a better plan. You need a better standard. You need a standard that refuses to be seduced by comfortable lies. One that says, if I said I'd do it, I'd do it. Period. A standard that doesn't make space for pity, delay, or drama. Because once you lower your standard to fit your excuse, you've lost control. You've handed the keys of your life to fear. And fear never drives you anywhere worth going. Discipline is what pulls you out of the story. It's what says, I don't care how I feel. I don't care what sounds reasonable. I care what must be done. That voice, the one that pushes past the excuse, is the one that builds empires. It's the voice that silences the noise, the voice that shows up when the convenient voice gets quiet, the one that keeps going while others are still arguing with themselves. That voice is always there, but it must be chosen, because excuses will always offer themselves first, and they will always sound better than the truth until you decide you're done living below your own potential. The winner is not always about talent. It's not always about intelligence, education, connections, or even strategy. More often than not, the winner is simply the one who stayed in the fight longer, the one who kept showing up when others backed down, the one who kept building when the crowd lost interest, the one who refused to quit, no matter how many times they were told no, how many doors slammed, or how long it took to see results. Because the path to winning is not paved with perfection. It's paved with persistence. Quitting is easy. It always will be. It doesn't ask anything of you. It doesn't require strength. It whispers to you when you're tired, when things get heavy, when the progress is slow and the outcome is unclear. It offers you comfort disguised as relief. It gives you an exit right when you need to double down. But quitting is a thief. It steals every chance you had at success and convinces you to be grateful for the escape. It tells you it's self-care, wisdom, logic. But what it really is, what it always is surrender. The people you admire, the ones who broke through, who built something great, who made their mark, they all had a moment where quitting looked like the best option. And they didn't take it, not because they weren't afraid or tired or frustrated, but because they made a decision long before they reached that low point. They decided that quitting wasn't on the table, that no matter how long it took, they would find a way. And that decision, that quiet refusal to give up, was the difference. You don't need to be extraordinary to win. You just need to be consistent. You need to keep going on the days you don't feel like it. You need to keep pushing when it feels like no one sees you. You need to keep refining, learning, adjusting, and showing up even when your results don't match your effort yet, especially then, because that's where most people quit. And if you don't, you're already ahead. Not because your circumstances changed, but because you refused to break when it got hard. The process will not be glamorous. There will be no crowd cheering you on at mile 47. There will be no applause when you're grinding in silence. People will doubt you. You will doubt yourself. But none of that matters if you don't stop. Every time you keep going when it would have been easier to walk away, you're building something no one can take from you. Resilience, grit, identity. The character of a winner is formed in the moments when continuing seems foolish to everyone else. But they do it anyway. Most people quit right before the shift, right before the breakthrough, right before the momentum tips. They think their effort isn't working, when in truth, they're planting roots beneath the surface. Progress is not always visible. Growth is not always linear. Sometimes it looks like nothing's happening, when in reality, everything is being tested and stretched behind the scenes. And if you can hold your ground, if you can endure the invisible phase, you'll reach the visible result. But only if you don't quit. Quitting gives you a temporary sense of relief, but it builds a long-term pattern of regret. Every time you stop just because it's hard, you're reinforcing the belief that hard equals impossible. But it doesn't. Hard just means it matters. It means it's worth the price. You have to decide which pain you're willing to live with, the pain of discipline or the pain of defeat. One leads to pride, the other to apology. And the choice isn't made once, it's made daily. There will be moments where you feel like nothing is working. Moments where you question why you started. Moments where the finish line is nowhere in sight. That's when the voice will rise. Maybe this isn't for you. Maybe you're wasting your time. Maybe you're just not cut out for it. That voice is not truth. It's fatigue. It's frustration. It's fear pretending to be logic. And your job is not to argue with it. Your job is to act in spite of it, to outlast it, to prove it wrong with movement. Winning isn't about who had the easiest road. It's about who kept walking down the hardest one. It's about who took another step when their legs were shaking, who woke up and tried again when the night before nearly broke them. It's about staying the course long enough to let the work compound, long enough to let the habits forge identity, long enough to let time reward the relentless.